a couple of weeks ago? Did it just feel like we just got through the previous season a little bit ago? Seems like they come faster every year. Welcome to the news conference for today. I guess Coach Stoops season opening news conference happening with y'all. Reminder, as coach entering his 13th season, obviously continuing his record as the longest term coach in Kentucky history, and also the longest current term active coach in the SEC. So we will turn it loose with Coach Stoops. Coach, let's get rolling.
Thanks, Tony. That just means one thing. I'm getting old. Good seeing everybody. Appreciate you coming today, Friday. I know people have wondered why. I mean, no big deal. I'm just getting some cut. I'm gonna look uglier than I do right now. So this week, so I just wanted to give you guys some time. I know a lot of you have been wanting to ask questions and get to this point. So I just want to give you the opportunity. Like I said, I'll be available Friday. Just don't particularly want to be on TV with a cut-up face. So that's it. But we've had a great offseason. Really excited about this football team. Just going over some things with our strength and conditioning team, and they told me this is probably the first time in 13 years that we had absolutely 100% participation. Not that you're going to have somebody miss voluntarily, but there's always going to be something pop up here and there. And this summer we had a situation where a freshman was late a couple times, and his unit grabbed him and straightened it out and got him right back on track. So it's been a tremendous off season. It's been very quiet. Guys have put their head down, have worked extremely hard. Like I said, they've been remarkable, really. And you could see that with their strength, with their size, and their commitment to each other. So the fact that we've been so consistent this summer says a lot about the things, and that's the way I've felt. It says a lot about them. It says a lot about the team. And it's the way I have felt throughout this summer, and so that's a good thing. Obviously, as I've mentioned throughout the offseason, it's fair to say, after coming off a season where we were not very pleased, failed to meet our expectations, our own expectations, and didn't play at the level that we wanted to, that we got to have a heightened sense of awareness, and we got to be just have a greater sense of urgency. Take a good hard look at all the systems and processes and things that we have in place, and make sure we're doing things right. And again, just attack those with urgency. We didn't want to just move past it. We had to look at everything, turn over every stone, and make sure that we were doing things to the best of our ability. I feel like we've done that. I love the addition. I've also talked about, the turnover in roster. After you're coming off a season like that, I feel like it was needed in certain places. And that's a good thing. We needed to continue to develop the young players in our program, and obviously we needed to attack the portal like most people. Obviously that's a higher number than we've ever had here, but again, I felt like it was necessary. I feel very good about those changes. I've also said, and it's true, where the continuity of our staff is super important. The first time I've sat here for, 5 years, where I had the same offensive coordinator, 2 years in a row. So that continuity was important. Obviously, continuing to build defensively with Brad White and the rest of the staff, super important. And Jay Boulware, what he's done on the special teams has been very, very good, very solid. I feel very good about what's going on in all three phases. And so very excited about the staff. We have a few new position coaches that have been wonderful additions. And, so overall, I feel very, very good. We're very excited, and it's time to go. I feel the off season was a success as far as we needed to get bigger, get stronger, and again, be more dialed in, if you will, and make sure that things were in order. When I talk about those things, I'm talking about schemes, I'm talking about the way we teach, the way we lead, the way we connect with players. We've done a very good job. We've been very committed, to re-emphasizing those things that are super important to us, and that's spending time with our players. With the leniency in being able to work with players through the summer, that's been great for us. We've been able to spend more time with them. We feel like we're further along. I'd say most people are, because you have the autonomy to work with your players through the summer. But we've done that consistently through the summer, where we actually been on the grass with them 2 days a week. And so we, that has been time well spent, and feel much better about things as we hit day one. So, again, just, I want to reiterate that, we're certainly not putting our head in the sand about last year, but we're also moving forward. And it's 100% attention to this year. There's been years when I sat in here in the first press conference of the year after coming off some historic seasons around here, and I didn't talk about last year. You know what I mean? I didn't talk about the previous year, because you guys would sit there and say, what, you're dwelling in the past. So I gave you plenty of opportunity, and I still will today, to address problems that we had, and I'm not avoiding them, but we are super excited about what's going on right now and how we move forward and what we're doing this year. And I mentioned the commitment, mentioned the strength and conditioning, the schemes, as far as working with the players all summer. I like this football team a lot. And I think also I mentioned to you, other people have asked why things have been quiet. Again, I've asked Susan and Tony to look at it. I've done no less media appearances this summer than I ever have in the past. I'm always available, not going anywhere. I think, it starts up with my Coaches for the Kids event this past Saturday. We raised a bunch of money again, 650 men there supporting the Children's Hospital. But I told them, the same thing, and I've told you before. I think everybody in this state can appreciate it if we just put our head down, go to work, and get this football team better. And I could promise you that's what our players are doing, that's what our staff is doing, that's what I'm doing. And I'm here to have this preseason media conference. I'll take all the questions you want. And then I got to get my face cut open tomorrow, and then and I get that face cut, and I'll still be around Friday, but I'll probably have sunglasses on. So I didn't think it would be appropriate to have a media conference with my sunglasses on. I'm not Dion. No. So he's the only one that could do that. So yeah.
Mark, at the they used the word grateful several times to talk about how you felt in an offseason where you have gotten a fair amount of heat coming off the year that you said wasn't up to you. How has that relationship kind of evolved? How did you get to that point?
Well, I think there's this past 2 or 3 years have been different, as you know. Everybody has talked about that. Every coach that coaches college sports, it's different. Everybody, we all have our own obstacles, and it is what it is. And I think I just got to a point where I have to embrace that situation. And I really believe we're coming out on the other side of that as a whole. And I think that's exciting. I think we went through some real difficult times. And, for myself, it's like I can't dwell on that. We had a rough year that I wasn't very proud of, and I've just taken the approach like, let's just embrace this challenge that we have and build this football team. Because as you build, you've heard me talk for years about building a program, building the culture, building a program. That is still true, but it's also very true that you have to just build a team. Like year to year, you have to build a team. And that's where we're at.
Mark, is the Kentucky football revenue share percentage, is it where it needs to be competitive in the Southeastern Conference?
It is. It is. It excites me because I feel like for the first time, I just feel like we're going to be in a position to hopefully be on equal playing ground with everybody. And that hasn't always happened, and I'm not throwing any shade anywhere. It's true, right? I mean, I don't have to feel funny talking about money anymore, right? It's just part of it, right? Part of all college sports. And it's been a tough time. But I don't like talking about that because it feels like an excuse. It just is what it is, man. It's gone. But I do feel like as we move forward with the support of the administration this past, forever, but, in particular as we guided, gone through this year and where we're going in the future, I really feel like we could be put in a position to be on really good ground. And I haven't always felt that way. You know what I mean? So that excites me. I feel like we as we move forward, these past 2-3 years have been rough. I really feel like we're in a position the next 2-3 years to really be in a good position. So I feel good about it.
Coach, chemistry, maybe locker room things weren't the way it needed to be last season. So how nice is it to have guys like Ty Bryant, Jagger Burton coming back who've seen the good and the bad of UK football, but also know that it means more to them since they're local guys?
Yeah, those are two guys that are part of that I'm talking about that have just been so consistent this offseason. I think Jagger's a guy that you look at just physically, man, he's taken it to another level. And him and Jalen inside, those are guys that have really, they've always been solid and really good players, but I just think the way they've attacked it in the weight room in the off season, they're just guys that could take it to a whole nother level. In Ty, the same thing. You've heard me sit here at press conferences when he was a freshman and talk about how he was, more mature beyond his years, and it's still the same. He's just such a solid guy and a great culture guy, great team, and so I'm excited about that. And again, I think. That is something that I've talked about through the offseason that was probably touchy with me because I feel like it did fall short. But I feel like it's never a bad culture. It's just not to our expectation. And when you lose, that you look at everything. And everything's on the table. And that's certainly part of it. I mentioned that, when we looked at all of our things, culture's the first one, and that we want to make sure it gets back to the level that we expect.
Mark, in the past on the D line, you had really big guys like you and Dion, and there's a little bit more, I don't want to say juice, or it feels like you got some twitchier guys up front that might not be as big. Can you all do more when more different looks than what you might have been able to do in the past?
I think, we're going to look at all options. And even last year, if you look at the scheme, if you look at the system, we got to just make sure we're, changing that, at times. And we're not going to drastically change anything. But with these type of body types like you're talking about, yeah, it gives us the ability to do some other things. And I don't want to give away too much, so I'm trying to guard that right now. But yes, and I do feel like with this group, we're talking about, like, if you just go with the inside guy, you look at David Gusta, he's a guy that's 316, 320 type guy, but man, he can move. He's a guy that, this offseason, he did 225 38 times. He is physically what you want and very twitchy and very disruptive inside. And then you got Khalil, who's 292 pounds. You got Tavion, and again, I'm not making excuses, but you go back to last fall, you got Tavion, who was injured the spring before, along with Josiah. Both of those guys were not even relevant last year until they got healthy, and that was way late. And both of those guys are back. Tavion's a guy that's 300 pounds and that can move, and he's healthy. And Josiah is down. He got a little heavy because he had been injured and everything, and he's back at 320 and gives us some stout stout presence inside. Gerard Smith is a guy like you're talking about that's twitchy, that's 275 pounds now inside. And, McKees, Grace is a guy that's dynamic now. He's physically on the edge, exactly what you're looking for as well. But he's, 272 pounds, 271, 272, but another guy that vertical and 38 inches, 10'6" broad. I mean, very athletic guy. And then you have the addition of Sam Green and Cam Olds, on the edge as well, that are both very good players. And a guy like Steven that plays so hard. So, you got a good mixture of guys with that D-line.
As a secondary guy, you have seen players take the step where you got guys like DJ, JQ, players who played a lot last year. Where do you need to see them take that growth?
Yeah, I think just consistency. Inside at the nickel position, you got Q Scott and Jansen that are both need to play at a higher level, with Q's so young, but I think he's going to be a really good football player. And then Jansen's playing, much better, much more consistent. You throw those two in with the other main four, so to speak, you have a really good group. I feel like DJ and JQ are both have the size. They both played a lot. They should take their game to another level. You got Jordan, who's been a great leader. He's a guy that's solid, 210-pound physically, gives you everything you have, along with Ty. And so you have good experience, really good people. And as I mentioned, I think they could be a real strength. The secondary can be a real strength of this team. So I just think, where they could take it to another level, one thing is just really being dialed into the situation. Football IQ, being very smart. What's the down and distance? What's the situation of the game? What's coming, anticipating things. I think with experience, they could take that to another level.
Zach Schreiner was a kicker you all added kind of late. What did you see from him that you all liked? And is that kind of that starting position? Is that going to be
just depth? Depth at that position. And we feel very good, with Jacob Coway. He's a guy that you heard me brag on him a little bit in the past, but really big, strong leg. Obviously, you're going to need him to come along and have the consistency. We'll see. When he's thrown into it and the consistency that we've had, we've been blessed with consistency at that position the past couple of years. So we know he has the talent, he has the leg, and so we'll see where he goes. And then Aiden LaRosse is really a guy that's, again, just continuing to improve and really has a strong leg and hitting it very good.
Mark, when you take transfers from smaller schools, they might have shown it against one or two Power 4 schools at the end of the year. What's the biggest challenge for those guys now that they're going to have to face an SEC schedule every week, making that adjustment?
I think just that, just that relentless pressure, and physically we've worked really hard as always. But I think these guys, of the addition, I've talked about some newcomers and however you want to say it. I think one thing I've seen possibly different that's a good thing, as players are getting paid, that business-like approach is a good thing. You know what I mean? They're really dialed in, and there's some guys that needed to get stronger, needed to get bigger, and and they're coming up and they're doing that. I think you see a guy like Alex, at tackle playing at Bowling Green, and really good player, glad to have him, and just physically taking this offseason really, really serious and getting better. Another one's Evan, that we have high hopes for at center, but physically needed to change a little bit, and he has, and he's working on that, and so we'll see. But other points of emphasis that I talked about, you look at us on the offensive line, I think, it's fair to say we need to improve in general from last year, in particular on the offensive line, right? Well, now we go 6'8", 326. Josh Braun's 348. Jagger's 323. Jalen Farmer is a ripped 320 and super athletic. And then Alex is 310. You got Malachi at 336, and both the left tackles there are 6'8", with some size. And Abba's super athletic at 325. Evans up to a solid 302 and needs to continue to get stronger. But, as you can see, we got some bodies and some experience and some strength there. And really I could go on and on with the team. After last season, we had a meeting and looked at all facets of the program, and in our strength and conditioning team, I really challenged them because they are amazing. They've done a remarkable job for a long time, and they have my full trust. But I did challenge them because I'm like, yeah, we need to be bigger, we need to be stronger, but yeah, we need to be more athletic. We need a lot of things. And so there was a lot of pressure put on them, and they've really delivered. And now it's up to us and our staff to make sure that we, have a great camp. There's always that fine line, and again, I'm not making excuses. I went in the last fall camp worried from the previous spring, because I had 3 guys out for the year and multiple other injuries and guys that were already out with surgeries. And it did have an effect. And I can't pull back. We have enough depth, we have enough bodies, we've got to go. And we've got to be physical in camp. I think it reared its ugly head in the season, with critical goal line situations, critical, 3rd and 4th and 1s. I own that, you know what I mean? But I can promise you, we've already done that in the spring. We went full tilt live, like critical situations, and we can't hold back anymore. The bodies are the bodies. It is what it is, and we'll continue to try to be smart and respect our players. But we have to have a physical camp, and we have to work in critical situations. Go ahead.
Talk a little bit about the tight end room. You played a lot of 12 technique last year. You lost some bodies, but you brought some new guys. And other than Josh and Willie, what's behind that you can count on?
Well, I think Henry's a guy we talked a lot about in the spring. Boyer, he's a big presence. I mean, not only a good blocker, but I'm going to tell you, he shows up in the pass game as well, just with his size. Henry's, really good. And of course, Skinner is going to be a great addition as well. He's definitely a presence out there that you feel him.
Mark, I think there's only 3 returning guys in that wide receiver room. When you have so many new guys fighting for positions, how do you determine, kind of wade your way through the competition throughout this?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because, there are a lot of guys. And there's moments where one of them is showing up in certain practices and all that. I think it's got to be consistency. And, that's going to be a good competition through this camp. You got guys that have played a lot of football for us in Mac, Jamori, of course, and Fred. And then, you bring in, Kendrick Law, J.J. Hester, you bring Hardley, as a guy, Troy Stellato, has played a bunch of football at Clemson. And then, D.J. Miller's the freshman that so far he was here in the spring, and so we've seen a lot of him, and so there are a lot of there's some good bodies there. I think it's consistency. I will say what's nice about it is we're out there in the summer going through what we call them OTAs, but just out there working with them, and there's sometimes not a lot of difference, with what units are going. There's a lot of good fresh legs out there. So I think it is also fair for me to point out that we need that group to step up. We need them to be consistent. We need them to step up. We need them to make difficult catches, and we need to be able to rely on them that they're going to make the plays when we need them to.
At the end of spring, Brad had mentioned that he thought his biggest question mark was the edge guys. Mm-hmm. And you brought in some new guys to try to help with that. Can you kind of talk about that group?
Yeah, I think, if you look at, we're based out of a 3-4, but we obviously get to 4-3. But if you look at our edge with the bigger bodies, you look at McKees Grace and Gerard Smith and Brian Robinson and Javon Campbell and all those guys, and of course we can move Khalil out there as well at times and be much bigger, but, I think improved, much better. I mean, McKees is a great addition. Gerard is a guy that we've had high hopes for from the beginning, and he's just coming into his own and going to be a really good player for us. And then you look on the other side, and Sam Green and Cam Olds, those guys are very good football players. I think Sam is another one since he's been here, just physically, just his body, the suddenness and what he plays. He's one of those guys that just has a lot of pop to him. He's very stout. And then Cam, he's up to 245, maybe close, pushing 250, and a guy that could bring some pressure off the edge, and we needed that. I think it's definitely a position where we needed to improve, and Steven Souls is a guy that just plays very, very hard and can create pressure as well. So improvement in that area, and we got to. And again, it's another group, just like I talked about with the receivers. We got to have the consistency there, and we have to have the depth.
Staying on that group, Mark, just Brian Robinson, where is he at? What do you need to see from him moving forward to come over?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that just, still putting it all together, but he's a guy that's very conscientious, tries to work extremely hard. He cares a great deal, and, he's coming along.
Mark, the projected inside linebackers are a guy who redshirted last year to gain strength and a converted safety. Can they hold up to the pounding in there?
Well, Alex was one of our better players all last year. I don't know where he was on tackles. Was he? One or two. So, Alex has already proven he's past that. He was recruited as a corner, and I thought he might be able to play corner. I liked him out of high school a lot, and I'm like, no, let's start him at corner. He's a big corner, So, but anyway, he's a guy that's proven himself, and he is one of those guys that has been a great leader. Just had a great summer as far as physically taking it to another level. Last year was a great, I would say I was just so pleasantly pleased with him a year ago, making that transition, moving inside, and how well he played a year ago. I expect him to take another step. And with David Rayner, he's a guy that, he has to, continue. He's one, that quite honestly, he has to make sure he continues to get stronger and bigger. Our whole football team has, and he likes to, he lingers around the same weight all the time. So we just gotta try to continue to make sure he physically can hold up behind that. But that's why you go get a guy like Landon, who is 240 pounds, in there, and is a thumper. So we really feel good about him. And then two guys that have taken big steps that we've liked all along is Grant Godfrey, playing behind him as well. And then on the other side behind Alex is Antoine. And Antoine is a guy that came in, he could just lightning fast at 190 pounds, and he's up to, I think, like 216, 220. He hasn't lost a step. He could run. And so, we feel like we're developing that depth behind him that I agree with you we need, because it is hard to hold up in there. And so without calling him out, I'm not calling him out, but he just needs to hold up, is David.
Mark, you've gone almost 29 minutes without mentioning the QB, and no one's asked you about it.
Good. Let's go prove it. Yeah, I'm not, we feel good about it. We all know we need to play better at that position, but we all know we need to play better around them. We need to give them some time. We need to make tough catches. We need to have balance, and we need to help those QBs out. Feel very good about those guys. With having Bo Allen back as such a mature, smart, almost like a player coach, third, we could invest a ton of reps in the top two guys, and they need a lot of reps. Just the continuity, and just continuing to develop that rapport with the new receivers and the O-line and getting the reps. But Zach and Cutter are two guys that we feel very good about, and I don't, you guys are invited to practice. You've been to practice. You're going to come. I think we opened it both days this week, right? Friday and Saturday to you all, to you guys, and opened to the public on Saturday. You'll see them participate, and you'll see what they can do. But I have a lot of confidence in both guys, and we'll go from there.
To piggyback off that, if there was a game tomorrow, who would it be?
If there was a game tomorrow, Zach would be under center, but this whole depth chart is going to move before. Well, not the whole depth chart, but it can move. It's all open to move by the first game. We have a lot of practices to go through.
And then, second year in a row, got an SEC game, week 2. A lot of schools play, 3 non-Power 5 schools or Power 4 schools to get the season started. So how is it important to start fast for you guys since you're playing Carolina again?
Yeah, it's Ole Miss, you mean? Yeah, we got a big game in week 1. I mean, honestly, I'm not just saying that. It's not coach speak. I think you all could recognize that. A team that's picked to win the MAC, and a very, very mature football team, and well coached and everything. So that's going to be a big game, and that'll get us prepared, because we have to be prepared for week 1. We go Ole Miss, and just in general, talking about the schedule, it's awkward this year as far as where the buys are and all that, and the back half is going to be, I don't even like looking at it, because of the way it falls with no buy and the teams that we play, but it's just an awkward schedule. But again, remember, we're embracing it. We're optimistic and we're excited about it. So, it is what it is. I can't change that. I can't change when our buys are. I can't change who we play, when, all that, So it is what it is. Bring it on.
You got a late addition, Seth McGowan at the running backs. What does he bring to this team? What do you like since he's been here?
He's a big-time player. He is a big-time player. He's just he's good in a lot of areas. He's explosive. He's got a lot of experience. He's dynamic. And Dante Dowdell is another one, man. It's everything we thought. He's a really physical guy and really good player. And I'm proud of Jamarion. He's really improved and gotten better. And he's one that that mentality that I've talked about, kind of just put his head down. It's been quiet, just been working. I mean, heck, he's almost up to 200 pounds. And so he's a guy that I think he's 198 or 197. He's a guy that just physically, is getting better. And there's good players around him. And so there's good depth there.
Mark, about Seth.
He was open at New Mexico State about how much he learned from what happened at Oklahoma. In the transfer process, how do you do your homework on a situation like that? And how helpful was it that Coach Bowler was there?
It was extremely helpful that Coach Bowler was there and knew who he was as a human, knew he was as a person, along with other folks that I know, around that program and everything. And so obviously it's very important. You do a lot of background, a lot of, and a lot of checking and everything, but he's really come a long way. He's learned. He's made a mistake, and and so he has to make the most of it. So he's been a very good addition. I love his personality. He's fun. He's energetic. Does his job, and he's dynamic.
Coach, speaking on the receivers, Jamori is the guy that decided to stay despite not having his best year, which you don't see a lot in the current landscape of college sports. Can you speak to his loyalty to the program and how he's embraced kind of a leadership role in this upcoming season? Yeah,
I think Jamori's one of those guys. He came from the Ben Major. He had such a great career there, caught so many footballs, and then, came here and, we were working our way through a tough season last year, and it was frustrating on a lot of people. And but I think the way he showed up and made plays down the stretch probably had a lot to do with that, And so just appreciate him and the way he's grown and how hard he's worked, and he's trying to be as good a leader as he can and working hard with that group. And so really appreciate him.
Mark, after the governor's up here in November, you mentioned that this program isn't as far off as the day you walked in the door here. Are there things from back then when you were building this program that you can use now, or is the sport so different? Like, that's not even relevant
Well, yes and no. I mean, of course, there are fundamental things that you could always lean in on. Heck, I could go back to Hayden Fry and playing at Iowa and being a graduate assistant with Hayden Fry, and some fundamental aspects that you will always hold on to. So that part of it, yes, there are. And then there's the piece that changes. Yes, it's definitely changing. As I mentioned, I think, again, same analogy. You program build, and you certainly don't put your head in the sand when you make mistakes or things can be better. You have to look at everything. I'm a big boy, you know what I mean? I don't get sensitive to those things. It's like you better address them, look at them, and get better. But there's also, certain aspects that you just better build a good team. It's kind of like in the NFL, you know what I mean? They have a great team if, left tackle gets hurt or starting quarterback or whatever it might be, we fell short last year. That's on me. I've said it over and over again. We didn't have all the pieces in place. It wasn't like everything was a mess. We just didn't have a good enough team. And ultimately, that's on me. Didn't have the right pieces in place as well. Were there other aspects? Yes, I'm not denying that either. It's always magnified. There's always things, you know what I mean, that comes up when you're not as good as you want to be. Yeah. Take it all.
Was it challenging to kind of convey that message during the recruiting? How do you feel like the summer recruiting went for you all?
Well, the portal, going back to after last season with the portal, we were a top 10 portal, you know what I mean, and did, extremely well there. Again, without crying or going back, I mean, having a few resources helps, right? I mean, let's not put our head in the sand. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have them. And then with this cycle through this summer, I've been very optimistic because I feel like now we feel like there's some outliers out there, but you're working within a cap. You have a fighting chance if there's some semblance of a cap, if you will, right? And so I feel like that has given us a good fighting chance, and I'm very pleased with the way this cycle's going for recruiting when we sign them in December. I love the way that's going.
Like you said last.
Go ahead.
Follow up on those offensive linemen that you talked about earlier. Building depth there is
Yeah.
the goal of you the last couple of years. Do you feel like that's coming on, and how many do you feel like could realistically be in a rotation?
I feel like, you have the first guard in. All right, so you could move Evan up, Jagger to guard, right? That's the first inside move. Okay, so you got two guards. You got two centers, and then you have the guards that could swing along with Abba. Abba's going to be ready to play. He's a guy that we really feel good about. So that gives you 5 inside as Hayes continues to come along. Hayes is one of those guys like we've had, for years here, that you give him time, he's going to work his way into that rotation, as he continues to put his head down and gets better. So I appreciate that. And then with the tackles, I feel really good. Obviously Malachi's a guy that was thrown into the fire, into a very difficult situation for him a year ago, but he learned from it and getting better, getting stronger, getting experienced. And so I really feel good about that. And then with Darren, is a freshman that is going to get a lot of reps because he'd be the 4th tackle right now, but hopefully, through a 3-man rotation until he comes along. So I feel better about the depth. Certainly, you feel like you have 8 guys that can start.
Mark, you mentioned last spring or this past spring that you all needed as a staff to do a better job of evaluating people coming through the portal, both as players and as you said, as humans. And you've also said that the leniency and the rules allowed you to work with the guys a lot more. Can I assume that's why you feel so good about this team, because you've got an earlier chance to get to know them?
Anytime through the evaluation period, I think everybody wants to be better or be the best they can at that, right? And I've mentioned in here many times, the NFL could come in here and work guys out and meet with them and things we can't do, before they draft them and they make mistakes, right? It happens. And so I think, when I say that, again, I don't say it like that's the headline. It's just, that's common sense. To improve and to get better, and that we're going to hit some home runs on guys that nobody thought we'd hit home runs on. You don't really talk about that, but the misses you're gonna, are magnified, and you don't want to do it, and bringing guys into the program that maybe, are great kids, but maybe can't play at this level. It's not good for anybody, and certainly you don't want to bring people in here that don't meet your standard with your culture and don't meet their standard with playing. Now you're really, in a bad situation. So you don't want to do that. And then with the team, I think it's just the proof is in the pudding with them, right? I think, as I mentioned, with us, that, starting all the way back to last offseason, there was a lot of work to be done. And, and I feel like they've done that, whether it be, all the way back to last winter, with strength. And then you take it to the mat drills or fourth quarter drills and things we do, and the mentality that they had, the toughness that they showed. And then, through the summer and the consistency which what they've attacked things have been impressive. As I mentioned, the fact that they've been, darn near absolutely perfect on, attendance and also on time, is pretty remarkable, pretty consistent for an awful lot of workouts. And then with our time on the grass with them this summer has reinforced that. I think they've been very good, very consistent, working very hard, and that's what we need to do. So, to them, they're pretty resilient. They don't really listen to a lot of outside noise. They kind of just put their head down and go to work. And that's where I said maybe the freshness of 50 new faces that weren't here, that didn't have the negativity of that last year. That is refreshing. That helps in certain ways. I like that. The heck with what happened last year. I wasn't part of it. But, they're worried about what we're doing now. And that's fun.
Along those lines, Mark, how do you feel that your team has that mental toughness to, if they experience adversity, how will they move past it kind of this season?
I don't know that. I just know what we can put them through to try to prepare them for that. And the maturity that I see in them, that's all I could judge it on, because we haven't experienced it yet. But I could promise you when I talk to them, that's one thing you talk about, like when we hit adversity, because it will happen. How will you respond? We try to prepare them the best we can by the stress that we put them under through these last 8 months. And they responded to that. I like the attitude. I like the space that they're in. And that's really all I could judge it to at this point.
Mark, I was saying, Mark, you kind of just praised unprompted earlier Jamarian Wilcox, and we saw some flashes from him last year, but mentioning the steps that he's maybe taken forward in his maturity, how much better do you think he can be now that he's maybe taking care of those?
Well, I think we all saw the talent when he was running the football, and I think you all can understand, like, if you're sitting here and you're making those decisions, I think we all understand competition and depth drives a lot of things, right? And so he hasn't flinched. He's kind of just gone through the process. And that's all you can ask of any young man. And so I really appreciate him of embracing the competition, not running from it, and putting his head down and just getting himself better. And that's all I ever challenge any young man, my own children. Like, let's not worry about anybody else. Let's worry about you. And how do you get better? And he's done that.
Mark, John, a kick returner, obviously, Marion was one of the best in SEC history the last few years.
Yeah.
Does Kendrick just slide in there? I know he did that at Alabama.
Yeah, he's definitely first option. Yeah, he is. And maybe a guy like Jamarion, too. But K-Law is strong and can run and has some experience, and so he's definitely one. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thanks, and thanks for understanding. Now you get me out of the way, and you guys could deal with some other folks Friday. So if you see me with a big patch on my eye or looking all funky, don't take a picture of me. All right, no, I'm just kidding. Have fun. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, I got 3 things to tell y'all. If you haven't texted me that you want